Support comes from BECU, a member-owned credit union putting people over profit, offering financial services and support to the community with access to local financial centers, over 30,000 ATMs, and online resources at becu.org. Federally insured by NCUA.
Hey, good morning. It's Patricia Murphy. It's Wednesday. This is Seattle Now. After more than a year of remote school, parents and many students were happy about the return to in-person learning. But we are still in a pandemic, and for some families, online school makes more sense. We'll hear from a mom whose elementary schooler is still learning from home and find out what Seattle school officials are thinking about keeping remote learning around. But first, let's get you caught up. That was a false alarm nobody needed. Seriously, no. A tornado was not about to hit Seattle yesterday. The National Weather Service says a warning that blew up phones around noon was meant for East Kitsap County and was called off shortly after. Tornadoes do happen here in western Washington, though. There was one in Port Orchard 3 years ago. Just a mess weather-wise, and it's going to be like that for a few days. So slow down, give extra distance while driving, and keep those storm drains clear. Seattle public school students are getting an unplanned long holiday weekend. School officials told parents yesterday they're canceling school on Friday because they don't have enough subs to cover the number of staff taking the day off. Classes are already canceled on Thursday for Veterans Day. No freebies, kids. That day is getting added to the end of the year. And for the first time, federal prosecutors used DNA evidence from a tree to bust an illegal timber operation. Prosecutors say Justin Wilkie led a ring that poached valuable maple trees from the Olympia National Forest, then sold them to a Tumwater mill using forged permits. A Forest Service geneticist testified that the wood Wilkie sold to the mill matched the remains of 3 maples found by investigators. He's been sentenced to 20 months in prison. This time last year, Seattle students were zooming into school in their pajamas. Now, kids are back in person. But remote school was a good fit for some young learners. So the district is exploring whether remote learning could stick around. It's piloting a virtual school option for families that may need online instruction, like Erin Tansey and her son, Bo. Bo was born with kidney and liver disease that's kept him pretty busy with doctor's appointments. When he was 6, he needed a kidney transplant, and he got one from his mom.
This was right before the pandemic started. So we had just been through a lot medically, really his whole life, and then especially right before COVID. And so when COVID hit, it was just kind of a no-brainer that we weren't going to go out in the world and we were going to take all the precautions and stay home. And I wasn't willing to risk another medical crisis with him, especially if it was something that we could prevent. And so we made the decision to keep him home, especially since all the kids weren't vaccinated yet.
Write a multiplication equation to describe the array. So count the windows.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5.
Having a remote school option for your immunocompromised child worked out well for Erin and Bo. This year, he's doing 3rd grade at Queen Anne Elementary from home. His mom says some things are working great, like art class.
Kids have so much access to other materials that they wouldn't have access to. And it's really true. Like, Bo can run around the house and like grab a box from outside or tape from over here or his Legos from over there and like really use the whole house as his classroom. And so taking advantage of that has actually been a benefit. And he also sets himself up a little fort where he's got his like online school set up in there and he really loves it. So, you know, in that way, it's actually kind of neat to have your whole house be your classroom.
But just like last year's remote school experiment, it's still hard to get that social interaction through a screen.
You know, I think it was really hard for him at first, to be perfectly honest. Like, it's a definitely a foreign way to interact with other kids, you know, in a big I think there's 26 kids in his class. If you're not ready to interact socially and you don't know any of them and they're just a picture on a screen. How do you make those connections? And it was challenging for him. And he said, I don't really know anyone in my class. And the teacher has been amazing. She creates these breakout rooms where kids can kind of get to know each other in like smaller group settings. And then she'll also hop in there to kind of facilitate the conversation and make sure everybody's getting to know each other. And it took a while, but that seems to be really like working, and he's making connections with other kids. And so I see a shift. I see a shift in the comfort level. I think it took almost 2 years to get here and some like really hardworking teachers, but I see a shift.
Erin says she's optimistic that Bo can return to in-person school once more kids are vaccinated. Maybe in a year or two. But what about the idea of giving more kids the option to do school from home? I talked with the district's director of the virtual option pilot program, Dr. Caleb Perkins, and the principal of the K-5 school, Janine Roy. Thanks to both of you for taking the time.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
Let's get the landscape first for families who may not have kids in the public school system. What are the options right now for online learning?
We launched this year, as we were thinking about it, even past spring, as thinking that in-person learning was going to be the right approach, the best approach for nearly all of our students, because of it's the way that we can best serve our students. And it is ultimately what we were hearing from many, many communities and family members. As we got closer to the start of the school year, with things like the Delta variant and other pieces going on, with vaccinations obviously only being available for students who are 12 years and up, we decided to go ahead and launch a pre-K through 5 virtual option pilot program. And then most recently, because of continuing interest at the 6-12 level, grades 6 through 12, we originally reached out to a number of families and gauged interest. We had about 300 families who reached out over the summer. So right now we are just launching up to a 300-person virtual option that will be connected to Cascade Parent Partnership, and that's for grades 6 through 12.
Okay, well, tell us about the pilot program and what's being offered here.
Sure. So children come to class, they begin at the start of the day just like they would in person. They have an opening meeting, they gather together. They may have a class meeting to check in to see how things are going. They may be seeking a solution together about something. They may be focusing on a social skill or an emotional regulation skill. And then they move into academic classes. They have times in their day for either PE or visual arts or music. They have lunchtime, and Seattle Public Schools continues to make sure that whether a child is in person or virtual, they are offered free lunch every day. Teachers build in small group work and whole class work, just like they would in person, only it's done in a virtual environment.
I'm a Seattle Public Schools parent myself. I remember getting this survey over the summer. You're serving 300 kids right now in this pilot program. What lessons did you learn from the previous online school year that you were able to apply to this model?
There haven't been too many silver linings of around the pandemic, but one of the ones was the technical expertise that nearly every educator had to develop and did develop impressively, particularly with using Teams and Seesaw, these programs that really enable students to connect with teachers and to figure out how to do classroom instruction. So it is something that's happening even in other classrooms that are not fully virtual. There's sometimes students who have to quarantine. So we're seeing some benefits from the fact that teachers had a whole year to practice with those tools and those resources.
This is a pilot program. What will happen next year? What are the plans?
Our commitment is to be as nimble as possible and to try to really learn from the data. We're going to learn a lot in the next few weeks with the release of the vaccines for 5 through 11-year-olds. And we were surprised that there was persistent interest in 6th through 12th grade, even after the vaccines were fully available. And so that's something we're going to have to listen to and think about for pre-K through 5 as well. So is definitely one option that we might continue these, and it wouldn't just be a pilot program. We would create sort of the kind of a permanent virtual academy for Seattle Public Schools, but that really has to depend on the demand and the interest and our connections to the values in terms of making sure it's serving our goals around equity and serving students further from educational justice.
Caleb Perkins, Janine Roy, really great to talk with you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening today. Jenny Cecil Moore produced today's show. Our production team is Caroline Chamberlain Gomez, Diana Opong, Clare McGrane, and Jason Pagano. Matt Jorgensen does our theme music. I'm Patricia Murphy.